Well, at the moment, I've got sort of the rest of my life relatively free at the moment, so it was quite good time.
Yeah, I don't know how you popped up on my Twitter, but then I saw about the release of your new book, and had a little knowledge of your profile, and thought you'd be a really interesting guy to have on and speak to. So thanks very much.
I feel truly honoured, especially by you guys. I've been doing my research on you.
Oh no. I'd just start by saying, Harry, I've obviously Andy mentioned about you coming on, so I haven't had that long. I've downloaded your book, Firearms and Fatalities, on Kindle.
Yes,
so I'm about 20% the way through. I'm actually at a point now where you'll know it is where you were off duty and someone was trying to steal some cash from. Yeah. So I'm not all the way through it, obviously, because it's
that's fine.
But I'm really enjoying it, and there's a few. There's loads of things we can talk about, but like I know 30 years service, and off memory, 24 of those years were with a gun as well, which I think which is interesting in itself. And some of the things I wrote down just briefly just to talk about, which is some of the stories which we've you've covered numerous in the book. Your thoughts on policing with guns, your thoughts on stop and search, even to the point of, you mentioned early on in the book about how the police were incorporating the public in decision making, which is again really interesting sort of to talk about.
In decision making, I've got the real issue with. But okay.
For people who haven't read the book and maybe want to read it, and give us a summary, maybe a good starting point of how you got into the police and early on.
Yeah, well, it started. I was born and brought up on the North Cornish coast in Newquay, and I was lived literally 20 metres away from Lusty Blaze Beach. And it's a beautiful area. But you have to consider, my dad was born in 1909. I'm 51 now. So he died when he was 79, when I was an 18-year-old. And he, when people at school would like, what your dad do? What's your dad do? And they would say, he's an electrician, he's a plumber. Well, my dad was retired, but he was a Spitfire pilot. He was married to a Hollywood actress. And my mum was his third wife, where he had 4 kids in 5 years when he was 60 years old. So you can see he was quite a dynamic. So I didn't have one of those normal child upbringings. I
wish we'd got your dad on the podcast, Harry. Sounds like
so do I. I want to know where he's been for the last 30 years, I must admit. But he's a fascinating guy. But the lucky thing about it, is I'm diversifying already. He wrote a book about it, several books, but one was like his autobiography, and that was the reason I wrote my books, just so that there was something written down. I had no intention of printing it, but going back as to what my childhood. So my dad was retired. My mum was a housewife for 4 kids, so we had 5.5 acres. Right, we had a tennis court and an old Bentley, but we had no cash. I mean nothing. And I think some of my mates used to think, do you know those really, really stinkingly wealthy people that walk around in rags? Well, they probably thought he's got a lot of money there somewhere because he's got tennis. So we had the land. We had 5.5 acres. We had a very small cottage where my mum still lives, and it was just a deal. I used to go hunting rabbits, climbing the cliffs and stuff. And used to get into a little bit of mischief. At 12 years old, I used to make bombs out of scaffolding tubes and weed killer and sugar, and try to make us big. I went to the casualty a couple of times. Nearly died several times, falling off cliffs and nearly falling off cliffs, I should say. And I mean, when I think now, so I had that sort of urge for adventure, really. And because I wasn't hard enough to join the Marines there, Andy, because far too much like hard work, to be quite frank. And I didn't fancy that yomp across Dartmoor. I basically thought, I went to an open day at Newquay Police Station, and it was this shitty little Ford Escort with a little blue light and 2 little buttons, 2 little switches, one for the and you won't remember, and the other was a little beacon light that used to go round and round. Yeah. And I just I was this is it, this is what. So I applied when I was 10 years old, dear Chief Constable, I'd like to join the police. Can I join the police? And I got the sweetest of letters back from an inspector at Newquay, and saying, we'd love to see you in another 10 years. Look us up, and we'll look forward to seeing you. And that's really, and ever since, I had that in the back of my mind. So even though I was sort of, you know, when you're a kid and you're in school and you're sort of, fancy doing, well, should we nick a Mars bar or something like that? And you know, we're deep into crime down our way, I tell you. I'm not going into any stereotypes here now, I tell you. I know which side my bread's buttered. And but it just made, I thought, no, if I want to join the police, I can't do that, you know.
Yeah.
So, and that was it. And I had various attempts and failures in my life going through the career that I've had, but it's a real way I've learned that never sit in the comfortable seat. If you want a fun life, then you've got to just go for it. And when, not if, but when you fail, because no one's going to go all the way up, you've got to give it another go. And leave all the bitter and twisted ones behind and say it was rigged. You know?
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
So that's really, I was very lucky, really. I had that urge to do that, to join the police.
Yeah, a lot of my a few of my friends anyway are in the police, and they had that exact same thing growing up, of that in the back of their mind, knowing that, you know, if they take a wrong turn as such,
yeah,
even a little bit of trouble, you know, then that does stop you from.
And I think we've got a little bit better in the criminal justice system. You don't hear that sentence often, do you? Because I think we realise that that's going to happen. You know, in the past, I'm retired now, but I think the criminal justice system knew that it would be terrible now to destroy a life of work because you made a silly mistake even when you were 16 years old. You know, so I think there's a little bit more empathy for that side of things. Depends what you do. Sometimes I was outside a club and someone would say, you know, I've got 3 for GBH and I've been out of prison for at least 10 years now. Do you think I could join the police? I'd love to join the police, you know. You think there is a limit, I'm afraid.
That's interesting though. So from 10 years of age, that was it? You were just kind of blinkered to be the police then?
I was.
Nothing else really came into
I was, and I'd love to say it was to this urge to help the community and be, you know, whatever I could do to, and there was, I'll tell you what it was as well. I think it was when I was in school, I didn't like injustice, and I would stick up for the kid who was getting bullied. So I would never get into fights for stuff I'd caused, but because I was fighting someone who was giving someone a hard time, and my cheek and would get me involved, and then it would be down the field sort of thing. Now in those days, it was all right because you knew it was just fists and grabbing and whatever. Nowadays, you're probably worried there's a knife going to be pulled, you know, and you're going to be jumped. It's all a bit different now. But so I definitely had that sense of injustice, and that I thought, no, that's just outrageous. And so this little geeky kid with a briefcase, and after the 3rd fight, I was like, mate, you've got to do something to help yourself at some point. Stop the parapet, you know, because I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But I remember one, and Mark Sevens is his name. It didn't mind. He won't mind me because we're good friends now. And he was a year above, and my cheek and his cheek sort of, we ended up on a field having a fight. And I'm thinking, this guy's older than me. He's been, I'm going, oh my God, I can't lose space, because it was like fight. Oh no, you know. And we fumbled around like 2 idiots, and luckily we fell awkwardly, and his jaw hit my shoulder, and I broke his jaw. And it didn't matter how, it was just the rumours across the school was Tangye broke Seven's jaw. You know, so I was fight free for at least 3 years after that, because I'd done the kid above me. You know, it was a complete accident. So in that way, I sort of realised as well that you know, when you're growing up, and it's like, oh, you need to turn the other cheek, and you just ignore the. And with my kids are 20 now, and I said, my son's black belt in Taekwondo and things. And I always said when he was a kid, just, you start it, I will kick your backside. But I said, if you're ending it, then I'll back you all the way. You know, don't walk away from it, because you'll just attract it. And So I've often used that because I'm sort of relatively well spoken, I guess, not the typical Cornish accent. and I often have used many times in my career, please don't mistake my politeness as a weakness. I will stick you on your backside. And it is that and they'd be like, should we start again? And they're, oh right, yeah, I didn't mean that, So it's really, I'm real sort of 99% of it is talking your way out of trouble. And I love that. I was often single crewed, literally with a gun on my side, because I'm operational firearms commander / team leader. In Devon and Cornwall, we're dual rolled because we have less gun crime. We have a lot more than generally people think. A lot of mental health issues. And if someone wants to grab a gun in Devon and Cornwall, it's one of the best places to do it. There's more guns per square mile than most other places.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we've got so much farmland, so we'd get a call very regularly saying, from a distraught woman saying, "Oh, my husband's just found, I'm having an affair with my boyfriend. He's put the shotguns in the boot. He's driving to the boyfriend's now. Well, do something." And so that's when we would get the calls, and often in Devon and Cornwall, it would be. It has been felt a little bit James Bondy because we got the helicopter relatively nearby, and I would look into the sat nav and go, certainly it's a bit better now, but sometimes in the most remote places, there was a guy with a machete smashing every windscreen of the car down the high street. Every shop window was going in, and I put in the sat nav, right, 1 hour, right, and this is cross country stuff, and right, where's my other sat? Where's my other ARV? Yeah, they're 50 minutes. Right, okay, can I have a helicopter? So literally 5 minutes later, helicopters landed next to me. I've dumped the car, bristling with guns and shit and stuff. Jump into my helicopter, go over to this place, do a circuit so we can locate him, drop it down where local bobbies pick me up in the car. And so that was my day. So it's an exciting life. And I've often said, you don't know what you're going to do for the next 10 minutes for the rest of your life in the police. It's just brilliant. Really is brilliant. And then you got all the shifts and shit, but there we go. And all the people complaining about you and saying how terrible you are because you're looking up supermarket aisles and stuff. People shopping.
With that then, and I'm sure we'll come into it, but then so you're retired at the moment then?
Yeah, I've done my 30 years, and I say retired, it's a bit fake. In the old days, retired, I think you had a gold watch and you were pruning roses and stuff. But I joked to my wife, I said, well, I think 30 years of policing was just the beginning for my proper career, really. But because I have got into social media in a big way, and it's got me into a lot of trouble, a few Daily Mail headlines and stuff, but you soon sort of realise that there's no such thing as bad news.
Yeah.
There's bad news, yeah, but bad press. But it meant I could grow a following that then, yes, it's about quality of followers, without a doubt. And I probably have quite a few of those 23-year-old scantily clad women with 2 followers following me, or otherwise known as bots.
Yeah.
But there's quite a few of those come up. But I just realised that I could start speaking to politicians. I can start speaking to radio presenters, LBC. Those sorts of people would be interested. So when there was stuff about the mopeds being knocked off their these cop cars were going around, driving around and hitting mopeds. I'm a tactical pursuit tactics advisor I was. So it meant I could, and that's a national thing. So I could talk on LBC and really give the other side of the coin as to what was so effective about this. And it's not just someone who's joined the police, jumped in a police car, right, let's find a moped I can knock off. These were advanced tactical pursuit and containment officers, extremely experienced, advanced, trained drivers who have these very specific ways that they do this sort of thing. And that really message wasn't getting across. So, and whereas in London, they can't regularly, because they're such a big animal, they can't afford to have everyone do their own Twitter account, that it was the real corporate approach being given on social media by a lot of places, unless you're really more senior rank, and even then you've got to be more corporate. So then I could just waltz in and talk for them, really, because I never really asked permission from the Met. So sorry about that. But
it's such a big problem, though, especially in London. I think the BBC did a documentary on it not so long ago, which was quite interesting, and it feels like certainly the and I know other cities have obviously got this problem, but London seems to have it worse than any.
Yeah.
That they just seem to be doing what they want when they want, and they're sort of there's no rules to them. And so the only way to seemingly stop them was, that everyone, you'll have an opinion on this, but I think everyone assumes that when a motorcyclist throws his helmet off, that the police then can't chase them because of, issues around health and safety.
Well, there was some truth to that, because there are certain forces that have had a no pursuit policy for motorbikes per se. Okay. Now, if that got out overtly, anarchy would reign. And I thought it's only a matter of time before that occurred. And guess what? Now it's gone back to the times when it was the XR3 escorts, where people were wheel spinning outside of police stations and driving off looking for pursuits and things. And that sort of disappeared a lot. And it just went to high value car crime, where your Range Rover would be stolen and disappear. It was much more like that. And now it's come back because of that moped issue. And there was a lot more of that, because unfortunately, I think politics got into it, and the police were so worried. They were getting criticised from all angles. I can't praise Devon and Cornwall enough. He's Sean Sawyer, the chief here, ex-Met, anyway. But they're real people. They give a shit, they really do. They're not. You do have some bosses who are trying to climb that ladder, and they're more inclined to keep the peace and keep everything all calm, and yes, we're to keep the mayor happy of London and keep the politicians happy, and yes, we love everyone, we like to speak to everyone, and you can't police like that. You can't do that. And Devon and Cornwall, they said, my deputy chief said, well, I guess if we're upsetting everyone equally, we must have it just about right. Which is a very wise thing to say, really.
Yeah.
And I think
that from someone who have not had that many kinds of altercations in that sense with the police, but I think straight away what anyone would say was, when you do meet someone who is a people person, a police officer who isn't what I'd call a job's worth, who actually does listen to you and does listen, rather than, they get so much more respect, and they get so much, from my opinion, from an outsider, it just seems to just work so much better than someone, like you say,
And it's just like every walk of life. There's one aspect where people think, if you listen to the media too much and you listen to the people who shout the loudest, I say there's a few people who shout the loudest. So then the general public, some of them may feel intimidated enough not to counteract that, not to challenge that. So if you're not careful on social media and the media, all you hear is from the anti-police. And I've had people having a bit of a wobble saying, oh, I've just got into the police one. Is this all right? Yeah, because generally the members of the public, they are very supportive. We need reminding now and then, because a lot of the people, we used to be reminding now and then. I've got to remember, I'm no longer a cop. You need to check me on that. All right, I'm trying to get used to it. All right, I don't want to be. That's it. I've gone, finished, done. All right, but we used to. We're dealing with the side of the public that are getting into a lot of trouble, and if we're not careful, we'll start to assume everyone's like that. We don't get sent to nice people's houses because they're nice. Yeah. We don't go arrest the nice people just to balance it up a little bit. So it goes that way. But you get a group of people, a group of officers, like anyone. You will have different characters. You'll get the funny one. You'll get, it's like your mates going to England, I think, with your team. You look at each of your mates, and not two of them will be the same character. And it's exactly the same with that. And so I think there's only so much training you can do in dealing with, certainly management. My management style is not in any book, I'll tell you now, because you've got to make the most of your skills and then delegate the bits that you're crap at, but openly admit, I'm crap at that. Can you do that? Even if it's a copper who's been in 2 years, you're really good at that because you've just done that. How do you? I've got to do a remand file. I haven't done one of those for 15 years. How do I do that then? And yet they're so impressed then that you've actually asked them. So the first thing is just realize that everyone's different. And so you get the negatives and the positives. And you need to kick some backsides now and then with some police officers. But I tell you now, I mean, I've worked in London quite a lot because I did the VIP protection for 15 years as well. So we would get called to there most years to do the big conferences and things. So cops are cops wherever they are. And we just slot in with them. And I tell you now, I was scared when I joined the police. Do they beat them up in the cells? Do they? You know, well, believe me, I don't know anyone who would have put up with that. I'm not naive enough to say it's never happened, but generally when people want to join the police, they're half decent people in the first place. They then get vetted, and then they don't go through a filter that strips them of humanity and makes them racist and homophobic. That doesn't happen. But then a couple of them will get through, and hopefully the sooner they're found out, the better. But then I've been accused and I've been interviewed for being racist. Completely, a really serious accusation, completely fictitious. But there was reasons for them to do that. They wanted to get out of the court case. They wanted to absolutely rip my character apart. And I just slept at night. I was fine. I was not going to let this person ruin my life. But some people, that gets to them. That gets to them. And then say, well, where there's smoke, where there's smoke, there's fire, so to speak. But go on.
Sorry, go on, Harry.
But I generally, you go around the police, and I can promise you now. And people say, well, Devon, Cornwall. So I know an awful lot of police officers very, very well, very good friends of mine across all the other forces, most of the other forces. And I've got to say, we're pretty much the same sort of people. You tend to be similar to Royal Marines, where you don't mind getting a little bit muddy and wet sometimes. You don't mind getting out in the public, not staying in an office all day. You want to go and do those things. And so we find it's with military, we tend to get on quite a lot with as well. That same sort of ilk of person who doesn't mind a little bit of danger because you're all right. It might hurt for a bit, but you're all right generally, So.
Harry, I just many people know this who are listening, but before I did this podcast with Andy, I did a different podcast, and I did it was stories in business. Yeah, so it was I had this isn't related to business one bit. So I had a Philadelphia police officer on the podcast twice actually. He was an air marshal and then moved to Philadelphia, and I had him on just because in America at the time, this was about 2 years ago, there was a number of, you occasionally see them on social media, short clips that come out, which a lot of the time don't give the full context of what's actually happened in the situation. And, he gave a good example that, if you think of the millions of interactions that happen probably every single day between police officers and members of the public, majority of them, well, 99.9999999% of them go, as they should. It's occasionally those clips that, and look, I'm sure there's clips that aren't taken out of context and the police were in the wrong, but then on the flip side, there isn't. So it's I agree with you. I think that there's millions of these interactions and occasionally few of the, some of the bad, in inverted brackets.
Yeah, and it's important. It's important not to give excuses, but there's certainly, I can see reasons. I can remember times when I've thought, Harry, just chill out a minute, mate. Just calm down. You snapped then, and I was blah, 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 and it was like, yeah, all right, bloody hell, and I thought, yeah, I did. And you've got to remember, at the moment, we've got officers who, especially in the counties, you could say as well, where they are going to work alone. They are self-briefing. They are going from their police station and being sent to a cop death. So they're literally searching a dead baby, quite frankly. They will then go to a burglary. They might have been to certainly in our way, a fatal road traffic collision. They could have been first on the scene. So then go back to the station, and by that time their colleague has gone off, as if there is one. They're covering 60 square miles. And then they actually go home. and they're going through a divorce, and they've got the same issues with their kids at school that might be being bullied or being the bully, or, you know, they've got all that. Now that pressure cooker going, and then you've got some little oik that is now, because let's face it, in the old days, right, in the 70s, no doubt, if a copper got a load of cheek, they might have had an uncomfortable ride back to the station. All right, I think when I joined, that was pretty much finished. That was, I can honestly say I've never seen anyone unwarrantedly punched or whatever. It's usually because they're scrabbling with the officer, and then sometimes I might think, well, that was a little bit over the top, but this was. But I think now you've got some little oik who's punched or whatever a police officer, he's out the next day and he's laughing in their face. And that can sort of build up over a while. You know, if you're told you're a racist scum every day, 10, 20 years, can you imagine? You can start to stereotype, you can start to get angry, you can start to think them and us sort of thing. And then your pressure goes, and then he says that one thing too much. And then you're onto them and someone's videoing it. And then you look like the worst person on this earth. Yeah. You're corrupt, you're evil. No, you were just human. Don't get me wrong, you're going to get those idiots that need to be kicked out of the job as well. I'm not defending that. And ultimately, if they've gone through that, they have snapped. And they need to see. I mean, there's been a few recently. I know exactly the ones you're saying. I get to the root and just say, what's this like? Because before I, not defend this too much, but before I give the other side of the coin, is this some arse who needs to get rid of? In which case, I'm just going to leave flat. And so often I hear completely out of character, salt of the earth. He's absolutely distraught as what has gone on. And of course, then you also haven't got the edited prior stuff. Exactly. About the other stuff, you see. So that's it. That's the way I see it, and that reflects really my own personal experiences of people as well, really. Which is normal.
Yeah, I think it's so true. I remember completely separate, but also when it just comes to humans in general. I remember when I was kind of just really fed up, and this is going back quite a number of years now. And I remember my dad saying to me, you know, do you think you possibly could have, you know, this PTSD? There was a lot in the news and things like that. And I remember just saying to me, Dad, you know, no, I've not got PTSD. I'm just pissed off. I've got a mortgage which is crippling me every month. I've got a missus who's moaning at me to do this. I've got kids running around there, but this. And you forget that there's just normal life, which is tough on its own. Never mind if you've got a tough job and you've got certain pressures. And I think that's what, unfortunately, with police, when people can maybe look unsavoury of them, I think you do forget that. You forget that the policeman there in the uniform has got every other stress that you've got at home. You know, he has got a, you know, missus who maybe likes to spend too much on shopping or they are, you know, behind on payments and stuff. And again, you forget that kind of human mistake can happen.
And people such as you and your colleagues, because you're in Afghanistan or whatever, and you've seen horrendous trauma and death, and sort of, I know there's sort of a halfway sort of cooling off bit, but 4 hours later you could be in a pub with some idiot, you know, slagging off all Royal Marines or something. Yeah. And you can suddenly see why, bang, because they haven't absolutely noticed. So it's a bit like when all those, I mean, I've probably attended, because I was a senior investigating officer in fatal road traffic as well. And so I probably attended between 150 and 200 road deaths. So a lot of bodies. I've turned it to an almost positive of making the most out of my life and just going for things and actually making. But then you'll see the relatives just think, this is disgusting. Look, I'm looking out the window and life's going on. The postman's posting letters. Someone's laughing. They've got the cheek to laugh in the street. Look, those two kids. And because the whole world is just. I say I've got an easy life because you guys were. I've got an easy life because you were literally. It was almost Russian roulette with the roadside bombs and things like that. It wasn't even, the rules weren't the same, and yet statistics danger being a builder than I am. Do you know what I mean? So I always look at that side of things.
It's so true. I remember, I think, Tom, we might have spoke about this on another podcast, but I remember my dad having to have a word with me when I got back from Iraq, because I was in Iraq and we'd go on vehicle patrols and there'd be, IEDs and the threat of IEDs. There was the threat of kidnap, where I was in particular.
Yeah.
There was deaths on the news all of the time. And then, like you say, within 48 hours, I was standing having a beer with my dad. And I kind of had one of these moments when I was looking around thinking, these fuckers don't realise that there's a war going on at the moment. And my dad had to kind of sit down with me and say, look, mate, it's not their fault that's going on. They've still got their Christmas shopping to get. They've got the bills to pay. You can't. But I know exactly what you mean. You kind of look at people and think, you shouldn't be standing there enjoying your drink. You should be talking about what's going on over there. And you forget
God forbid, one of them says, well, I don't believe in the war. And you're thinking, actually, my mates are out there right now delaying the fact that they're basically occupying these terrorists, so they're not in your front fucking garden, pal.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I feel kind of police have a hard time with, in a sense, because you do forget. I know I have in the past, kind of think you just forget that they are humans. They've got their own.
Don't give us too much sympathy. We're not used to it. All right. Yeah. So we prefer it.
Yeah.
We prefer
I think I've definitely got a lot more respect. I think obviously since being in the military, and that there's a similar kind of banter, and you can kind of have that relationship. And it's it's just that I think through my own personal what I've been through circumstance, you realise that when you have a bad day in the office as a policeman, it can look a lot worse than if you have a bad day and you work in an office in the city centre. If you blow your lid and next to the printer and you bang your hand on the printer or something, that's one thing. If you're a policeman and do that, it's completely different, isn't it? Yeah,
it's all relative, I think, though, because the person who does the office, it's still high pressure up to them. That's relative. Sometimes. Some of my section have been through absolute hell. We have the same issues with, I don't want to mention specifics, but so this person has about the worst thing that could have happened to their family, and they're coming to work, and then somebody says, you don't know what it's like, this, and I'm thinking, oh, fucking hell. You said that to the wrong person, pal, because this one's with cancer, they've lost a relative, their dog died yesterday, the whole thing is going wrong, and you've just said you don't understand because this guy has had his sorry ass back into work because they prefer to be at work doing work, and somebody else who's pissed off because they've lost like 5 grams of drugs. But it's, as I say, it's all relative. But I don't want to come in, and I've come in saying all police are wonderful, we're all angels, and we all deserve loving. But I think it's what I've done on my social media is just try to give a very honest other side to slightly balance it a little bit. And I sometimes say to people, when is it, do you think, that all these people who join the police from the general members of the public, what filter do they walk through that strips them of all that humanity that you think they've lost, where they suddenly become this police state, stop search, we're going to talk about in a minute, I guess, but, where we're just being racist and whatever, and I said, because one of the first things I say was, of course we stereotype. And they said in college, in the police training, it says, you shouldn't stereotype, you don't stereotype. It was ridiculous. When was the last time I stood outside a church, stop checking a whole load of 75-year-olds for drugs? I could equal the stats up, no problem like that. And that's why I hope when I do stop search people, I do it in the nicest way possible. And I'm no idiot. If you're spitting and shouting at me in my face, I'm not going to treat you like, oh, I'm so sorry, sir. We'd like to spit.
Yeah.
I will treat, but I'll always give someone the chance to say, well, should we start again? Because I will go, la, 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 la. Right. Should we start again and get this thing done properly? Right.
Yeah.
And then bring the tone voice down. It's all, and then 9 times out of 10, they're absolutely fine. But they're testing you to see if you're like, wah. But it's, it's good skills. But it's certainly a varied life. And it's an interesting one. And you always are learning without a doubt. People are complicated things to deal with.
One thing I wanted to obviously it was 24 years, Harry, that you had you carried a gun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was now I know there's even more checks and balances when it comes to carrying a gun, and one little mistake and you could I suppose ultimately done for murder maybe or manslaughter. What was that time like when you first transitioned from not carrying, because I can imagine and just being a normal human being that if you've got that as an option, that by virtue you're more likely to use it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see how people think that. I could say that's completely untrue in reality, because this is old cliche that we've heard all the time: the training takes over. The training, like the most basic training for an armed response officer. So, and that will be building entries, vehicle interceptions, open ground search, qualification shoots, and all that side of thing. Those infinitely, and they're quite, and the building searches again come very much from special forces military side of things. It will be very familiar, I would have thought, to Tom as well. Andy, what do you call it? I'm talking to Tom, to Andy. But basically the training you do is 13 weeks, and I say that would be 1 week of teaching you how to shoot and 12 weeks teaching you how to avoid shooting someone. And that's national course. That's national. Most of the training you get are scenario situations. You have no idea what's happening. And after a while, with muscle memory, and that's scenarios that vary, change, move, different people, different places, different. So, you're looking for a car, the car's there, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? Constant assessments to see where in that level do you go? Do you enter here? Do you have to enter up there? Terrorist, bang, 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 gone. Get rid of them. Right, you cannot negotiate with that. Okay, but what have we got? We've got a man with a gun. Okay, the gun's swinging around here. Why did you shoot them? Well, I thought he was going to lose. Didn't you think you didn't have any more time to just, and it's constant assessments to show. So if you have someone after years, in those 13 weeks, if they think they're getting the assessments wrong, they're out. There's no sort of, you'll be all right on the day. I failed many a course the first time because I just didn't get it right on the day. I had this thing like a lot of people get, is an instructivitis. I think, well, what do they think I should be doing? I should be doing this. Should I be doing this? And then I'm distracted. And then I learned how to deal with these things by just doing what I should do, what I've been trained to do, and if it's not good enough, tough luck. And of course, then you tend to sail through. So when I was at with someone genuinely, and I remember the particular cases where I thought, this is it, I'm going to have to shoot. And the red dot is literally dancing on their chest in my scope. And it's not like taser where it literally is on the chest, but that has a really good effect as well. But we're going in at the right. Well, we will always have, generally speaking, unless it's really defense, we'll always have less lethal. And there'll be a line in the sand, and they will say, right, they won't have to say it. That officer knows if he walks over that line, that little lump, that little thing, I'm firing the baton gun. That will give me enough time to then go forward with a taser, and like someone yesterday last year with 2 kitchen knives running at me, managed to get the baton gun onto him, knock him over, knowing full well I had a conventional weapon as well. So if my baton gun missed, didn't work, I knew my colleague was going to take him, but it gave them another chance of life with minimal less risk to me, minimal more risk to me, because obviously it's safer if I do. So there's a lot more complex. And when I'm actually looking through that scope, I know what I'm going to do because I've done it 1,000 times in training. So I'm not thinking, how am I going to feel if I shoot this person? I'm going to have to go to court. It's going to be a 6-week inquest at the very least. The Daily Mail is going to say, murder a cop, kills granddad of 2. I'm not thinking of that. Doesn't enter my mind. I'm thinking, if that gun goes like that, then I'm shooting. And there's no question. That's how it is. And I find it how everyone does. It's because the training is 4 days, hard training every 6 weeks. And it comes around very quick. And it's exhausting. Constantly being assessed. 4-man queue. into the doors, into the building. You don't know what's going on in there. You don't know what. So you're doing your search processes, you know, and then they'll have put a round in your gun to jam your gun. So you drop, someone takes over, third, fourth person know what's happening because they recognise it, so they take over. And this is in every force, and it's a national cause. So the 13 weeks has just started it, and then you've got those 4 days every 6 weeks. And then you're doing vehicle interceptions, and then you're doing what we do, TPAC. And then, because that wasn't enough, I did VIP stuff as well. So it's cracking. You guys paid me to do all this, I tell you. All your tax.
It's fascinating, Harry. You never really get to get into, especially very few times you get to speak to I suppose police officer who's more than willing to talk about it. Yeah, you know, especially on camera, I suppose, you know, and
yeah.
You know, so it's one thing following on from that is, I suppose you mentioned it earlier in the conversation, is when you were 60, you know, an hour away from that guy who was with a machete walking down that high street, smashing the windows.
Yeah.
As a member of the public, you know, at that point, I think it would be safe to say that we should arm more officers in that case, because it was an hour away. But what are your thoughts on arming more officers? Do you think there should be? There is talk, certainly at the moment, of arming more ever since certainly Manchester arena bombing and.
Yeah, totally. And at the moment, I think it's about 5% of officers are armed. I think, and especially for I think of different tiers of training, all right, as well. So you cannot, you know, between you and me, they're shoving it through as many, and whoever's listening to this, they're shoving through as many ARVs as they can get, okay? And because only a certain amount of people who want to do that, and secondly, there's only a certain amount of people who are good enough to do that. And to be honest, you probably only need those. It's the more rural places have trouble, and especially if you consider if the first ARV turns up, armed response vehicle, and they're taken out, gone. How long is it going to be before your next one comes? Okay, so that's the crucial thing. A little bit easier because there's more of them. London, they'll just throw everything at it. But I think, yes, and I think my previous chief was sort of mentioning this, is that I think we need another tier of officers who are trained in, so they're not trained in going into buildings and vehicle interceptions, things like that, but they are trained at the upstage of a taser. So they have those same assessments, because there's a lot at stake here. You can bring the reputation of the whole police service down if you get it wrong. So there'll be just as more like Northern Ireland, perhaps, where a lot of officers have sidearms. It's just like America. They have SWAT teams and they have their officers which are sidearms, don't they? I think it's inevitable. I think if we have another cluster of terrorist attacks, then I think it's going to get a lot quicker. But then consider as well, the weaponry is the cheap bit, you know, be it £1,000 a gun or whatever it is. You know, I mean, the taser's 750 quid, for goodness sake. Each cartridge is it's about 20 quid each. So the requalifications and training is you're chucking hundreds away. But then you've got all those people. Then you've got to find place in the calendar to train them, and you've got to find the facilities. Well, your facilities are already being used for armed response, refresher training. So you need to now have an infrastructure. So we can hopefully use the military sites as well. Ask them nicely, which we do. Use their facilities quite nicely. And food's bad. And so it's not just should we, it's how the hell do we do it? But not only and then the instructors, you've got to have more instructors. Instructors course for firearms, Jesus Christ. Not 6 weeks of sure hell. Seriously. I mean, it's just, they're not to a penny. That's the problem.
Do you think it would help the police a lot and the public if we were a lot more like America, where every cop has a gun? Do you think that would be beneficial for the country in general?
I don't think we're there yet. Just look at the statistics. I don't think we're there yet. It's not very nice. I mean, and it's not very nice if you're the copper who's in shit street and you've got nothing to have. And that's why I think, that's why when you're going to a job, they get as much information about it as they can. Before I've got into that door, I know who they are, how many sort of previous there is, what their warning signs are. So I've got a really good flavour of what I'm going to, even though I've never been there before. And that's even before I stop a car. I've got a pretty good idea who's probably going to be driving it, what it's been associated with in the past. So if anything highlights there, then it will just be standoff. We're just waiting for a backup. And often I would say, well, okay, we're back up. Okay, it's 10 minutes away. Okay, I'll take this. And I'll go in with knowing there's 10 minutes away. There's something there. But it is, so I don't think we're there yet. I think decisions if everybody's got a gun. One of my officers on the Twitter made he's a brilliant guy, really funny guy, and there's no maliciousness. He said, I wouldn't trust some officers with a staple, with a stapler gun. That's it. With a stapler gun, and he got hounded. Oh, why are you looking down on your officers? You put yourself on a pedestal. And he wasn't doing that, but he was trying to make a thing that it's just not for everyone. Yeah. But because the Americans, it's a different audience. They could be shot every job they go to. The guns are left, right, and centre. The shooting fatality rate is huge, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy,
massive. So everyone needs a gun over there because they're just gonna, it's a different problem, and we haven't got that yet. So
the big problem that we've had in Liverpool is, well, all of the UK, but I know in Liverpool I got involved in an initiative recently with the guys in Merseyside Police about the No More Knives campaign. We've had quite a lot of fatalities in the city centre, and that for me is just a scary thing. You mentioned a little bit about it before, like when I was growing up, you had a fight or a dispute. It was, I'll meet you at the back of the school on a field, and you'd had a fight, and then it was done. Then you would probably, a lot of the time, you end up becoming mates afterwards, if anything. Nowadays,
and now
it's just scary.
It is scary, and nowadays, and the same people fighting now would become mates under different circumstances. But it's all cowardness as well. It's all, well, 6 of us will jump you and stab you in the back while you're on the way home. It's just gutless, absolutely gutless. It's horrendous, and we're very, very fortunate down here in the southwest, where we don't have the issues that you guys have up there. And it's funny when you speak to cops, it's the same thing, and it's the same issues you get, but they just peak and trough in different areas. And I mean, we have enormous amounts of fatalities because we get a lot of people. Our population triples in the summer, and we've got a lot of people on motorbikes riding like they were at home, but they know how to ride at home, but the roads are different. And so something, So often I would say, it's a nice day to die today. And I'm a big biker myself. I've got a ZZR 1200 myself, I ride regularly. But yeah, when the sun's out and people come out in Devon and Cornwall, we have a quite high fatality rate. But I tell you what, this lockdown, it's really slumped the road traffic collision. And that's the ironic thing. There's absolute devastation going on now, and especially when you're thinking about the NHS staff, we're losing them regularly. It's absolutely horrendous. And then I often think on the other side, you've got those who would be dead now who aren't because of road traffic collisions and things like that. I mean, I was just thinking, because I've attended so much fatal road traffic collisions, then they're not really happening to the extent anymore.
It's so interesting you say that. My dad was a firefighter for 30 years, and he always said to me, "You are never ever getting a motorbike." just because of the sheer amount of RTAs and fatalities he went to as a fireman. And
I mean, I've had a healthy respect. I went from a 125cc Honda, and I got onto my 1000 CBR. But I think because I made such a big jump. Going, wah! And that would have killed me.
I did my full motorbike test before I did my car test, and I've said this before on the podcast, but so I used to have a Honda Hornet 600, and I think I've had more close calls in my car than my motorbike, because I've got so many distractions. I've got the sat nav. You know,
Yeah.
if my phone rings, I'm going to answer it. Of course, you know, if someone sends a text, you know, it's natural to try and you know, you can't not help and see who it is. And so, I really do think, you know,
I mean,
learning.
I've been to probably 25 bike fatals, and I'd say it's their fault, and 5% probably could have planned it a little bit better. So somebody who said, well, it wasn't my fault, I hit diesel in the road. But you were knee down on a bend when you hit diesel in the road. So expect there to be diesel on the road on that bend. So you just keep the bike a bit more upright and you go at a better speed and you're probably going to survive. But if you're whacking on a straight, then you're probably more likely going to be safer than if you're screaming around the bends, which is the fun thing to do, but you're going to find a tractor around the bend round here at one point.
On that, Harry, I mean, obviously you will have seen in the news, and I think it's great that it's got to have spoken about a bit more, but one thing I used to always find fascinating with my dad, and then also listening to you now, is PTSD is a huge thing that's associated to the military, post-traumatic stress disorder, and see, there's a lot of guys who unfortunately do struggle. But listening to you saying that you've been to that many fatalities on, you know, do you find it's a big problem in the police, PTSD? Because it's, in my eyes anyway, it's not spoken about as much for the paramedics, for the fire service, for the police. You don't, even though it's just as apparent that people could suffer from it, I don't feel it's spoken about as much as it is in the military.
It is. It's a lot better. If I was in the job and I suddenly had a problem, I would get it quick. It would not be frowned upon. It wouldn't be a pull yourself together type thing. Those days are gone. I think my management style is very much go in there. I know that my section will have been looking for a high-risk misper, and they found someone hanging in the woods looking. And so I'll be in the next day and I'll go, right, briefing, do briefing, get briefing done. Okay, Jesus, a bit shit yesterday. Who was actually at that? Was that you, Chris, sort of thing? And then Chris said, oh yeah, no, I was saying, oh right, okay. Mike, did you see the body, or had they found it by then? And they go, oh yeah, no, I went at the body and I climbed up, we tried to take the weight and whatever, and but it was you know, rigor mortis or whatever like that. Oh, Jesus. And then somebody else will say, oh yeah, it was just like the one, so. Before you know it, you're all talking and chatting. And it's not been that formal, right, we need to sit down and we need to talk about this. And you need to bring it up so it's natural. I remember attending a fatality of a 6-year-old child, and I was one of the first on the scene. The lad was an ARV officer who was doing CPR on this little child, and I could see, as I ran up, I could see his little knobbly knees jumping around, and I looked and I saw my son's face, and I thought, shit, it's my son. And it wasn't, but it was 6-year-olds. I had 6-year-old boy and a girl, and I could just, it was just his legs the way they are at that age, and little arms. And it got to the point, I had a load of witnesses who were quite young. It was at a quad biking place, and a car had a collision outside, which should have been a minor thing, but the guy had put his foot on the accelerator instead of the brake because he hit his head. And in sheer panic, he was just pressing the accelerator. I think it was the brake. So it was wheel spinning. And the parents saw this child and they called him, and the child, because he was kicking a tennis ball around the car park, having done their quad biking thing, and they ran towards him and he was taken out halfway. It was just the worst. And the vision then I've got of the parents holding hands with the 11-year-old looking down as CPR has been done on this child. And there was a really important witness who had just been witness to the original collision, but then had driven on thinking that's all it was. And then I hear that there was a BBC crew at the cordon. And did I want to speak to them? And I went, yeah, actually I do. And that crew actually got them, because it was the girlfriend said, that was a collision you just mentioned at that place, wasn't it? And they got in touch. So it was really invaluable information. But my mum was watching that. And initially I was thinking, pull yourself together. You're leading, you're meant to be leading this thing. And I was sort of shell-shocked, really. and looking around, and everyone else is shell-shocked. And I've got someone there who, at that point, I couldn't arrest and dangerous driving. I didn't know about the accelerator thing. I just could have been just reckless driving or whatever. And I remember on the camera, my mum said, that just wasn't you, you know. And you can see, it can get you a bit now.
Yeah.
But I found that as you can see, I'm quite chatty anyway. I don't tend to talk about stuff like this at home much, very little. But I remember I went to the post-mortem of this little lad later, and because I used to have to go with the forensic post-mortems, we needed to know where the child was in relation to the van, and could the car, would the driver have seen him, and so on and so forth, you know, just to paint the picture and give the detail. So at least then we could not only give enough for CPS, but get closure for the family. I found the post-mortem far easier than the actual incident itself, because the post-mortem was right. Okay, let's do this. Where is it? Yeah, let's sort it out. Right, fracture here. That's at that level. Go back to the collision investigators. Back to the thing. You know, where your bumper, there's a foam and it pops in and out again. But we go and measure fine. So we knew the point of contact and so on and so forth. So I talk about that, and people would say, "Oh, you went to a really shit one," and I could see tears in their eyes. And these are seasoned cops, you know. But there's no bald bollocks about that. There's no sort of, "Oh yeah, mate, you know,
yeah,
that was a bit rough, wasn't it?" You know, there's none of that bollocks anymore, which is really, really good. And I think, because I'm a soppy git, honestly, I'll cry out a bloody advert. You know, I'm like, wait, okay, right, you know. Britain's Got Talent. Well,
yeah, same. That's for me.
The early days, I'm like, oh, okay, but you know what? I think that's a release valve. The fact that I can go back.
Yeah. And
I was slightly petrified that this next one might be the one. But the one recently, a bike, and literally his chest was open. You see the lungs going. The surgeon from the helicopter, phenomenal. We're going to lose him in 5-10 minutes. He's hemorrhaging blood inside. Under the motorway bridge, pissing down with rain. I'm holding a torch. Surgeons cuts across nipple, opens it up. I can see the heart. Jesus. The nurse is massaging the heart. The guy is pulling the lungs aside to look for these lacerations, because he knows you've got a 20% chance of stopping this by sticking his finger in where the hole is. But it was just too much. It was just too much. Now I've got some kids on cycles cycling up, and I was like, wait, back off, you know, because I'm thinking, they see this. And for me, I find that fascinating. I did also think, I better not drop my torch, because I'm never going to find it. Yeah. But I just think, wow, that's just phenomenal. All these people out there, you know, are military, the soldiers, you know, the air ambulance, the paramedics, doing this stuff every day. And I just think, what a life. It's been a hell of a life, I tell you. Been you know, I didn't want to be an estate agent, not paying them.
I mean, incredible that story there. I mean, it's heartbreaking that of the 6-year-old. Yeah, I mean, and about the that open heart surgery as well. We had Andy's doc on, who amputated his leg, and they're just incredible. And Doc Lambert, and he's just so methodical, and some of the, you know, especially being a doctor in a war zone as well, just
unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable. I mean, I've read quite a few books on the Chinooks and the medical.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you know,
it's unbelievable. Yeah, the medical advances and things that we can do now, it's absolutely unreal. I mean, I always talk about, and you'll know this more than, well, you've already spoke about it so clearly and so well about how much the team, you know, works. And when I do these motivational talks, I talk about teamwork, and I say, you know, whether it was the guy on the ground who put a tourniquet on my leg, which ultimately stopped me from bleeding to death, or whether it was the guy in Birmingham airport holding up a couple of paddles when my plane landed. You know, if not everyone had done their job to the best of their ability, seconds would have been lost, minutes would have been lost, hours would have been lost, and I might not be here now. And it's those medical advances of getting everything just right, you know, whether it's the surgical stuff, or whether it's the
Yeah.
logistics of making sure that this happens and that happens, and then it just goes
And
like clockwork. And it's something that I'm not very patriotic whatsoever, but it's something when I do watch military stuff now, I feel so proud to that's we've done that, like this country, Britain, we are.
just remember as well, Andy, that the advances from medical, unfortunately, are through war. Now, and with the ARVs, we'll carry oxygen. We've got oral pharyngeal airways, nasal pharyngeal airways. We have Celox, anticoagulant, coagulants rather. So gunshot wounds very similar to road traffic collisions. All that's come from the military. So remember when tourniquets back in again? They were much more narrow, and they found actually they released the poisons and this, that, and the other, and they went out of fashion for a while. And then it was through the military and through Afghanistan, Iraq, and that sort of thing that they came back again, because they realised actually, and they use them in operations, and they'll have them on for 4 hours if necessary to do their.
That's what a big frustration for my surgeon was, how he would go to Afghanistan. He would see a guy who became a triple amputee, unfortunately, but survived. And then, he'd come back home and someone would get stabbed and then be 2 minutes away from hospital, but yet somehow die. And it's because, slowly those medical advances weren't quite there yet. But now, like you say, it's good now that they are now crossing over.
We're very lucky in Southwest because we have Lympston literally just down the road. We've got Plymouth. And so...
Well, I had my leg amputated at Devon, so I spent a lot of time down in the Southwest. Yeah.
Did you? Was it the right leg then? Was it the correct leg that they took off? Because we know what they're... If you're in Torbay, mate, you might have had a problem. No.
Yeah, exactly. I've spent a lot of time out of my life down in the Southwest. I go down to Polzeth quite a bit as well. Amazing parts of the world. But one thing I'm dying to know, mate, and I'm sure, like you say, with Tom reading your book, but he can maybe prompt you on a few stories. But one thing from a personal point of view, and I know this is quite early on for you because you've only just retired, but what are your plans with trying to replace that job? I mean, you've done so much there already. What I hear, and I'm looking forward to reading your book. But from my own personal point of view, I went down quite a slippery slope of feeling like I had no worth, no purpose. I began drinking too much. I gambled too much, and for a couple of years, my life was on a bit of a downward spiral. I was going nowhere quick, and I think it was just because I lost that structure, that purpose, that brotherhood around me, and then suddenly it was. It's always a taboo subject, money and finances, but it was a weird for me because, I wasn't a millionaire. I didn't have enough money to go and sit on a beach and drink pina coladas, but I had enough money where I didn't get up and have to, work my bollocks off 9 till 5 every day. So I was in this weird limbo where I didn't actually have to do anything, and I just lost all self-worth. And it was a tough time in my life, and I realised it happens a lot with professional sports people. Yeah. You go from being a professional boxer, you're getting, someone like Ricky Hatton getting 50,000 people singing, and then all of a sudden it stops. You get a lot with people who've had careers such as ours. And one, are you fearful of something like that? And two, what is your kind of plan to maybe combat that?
I was listening to Jamie Carragher one, and I was thinking, what, ding, 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 where they say you've got your professional sports people who are adrenaline, the whole crowd are wah, 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 and then they've got nothing, and they're a nobody, and they're gone. And I'm very conscious to know that I don't want to be like, if you look at my Twitter account, it won't say it was VIP officer, operational firearms commander, firearms tactics advisor, pursuit tactics advisor, advanced driver, VIP driver. It won't say all that. It'll say was a cop once, I think it says. And because I'm really determined to have that as a section that's gone. Now, the big difference with you were thrown into it. You had no plans at that point to be where you were. So you weren't able to prepare mentally, physically into leaving the Marines and having a life on your own outside the Marines, because you didn't expect to get blown up. And I think that is a crucial thing to remember. Whereas I've had quite a long time now of looking at my colleagues, and honestly, I've got spirit. I like a whiskey, a gin, and I like my real ale. And I looked yesterday, 14 units a week, is that all we're allowed? I thought that was for, Jesus Christ. Anyway, I'm on 28 at the moment, and I measure on the schooner for whiskey, because I know how easily it would be for me to, well, that was comfortable. And instead of, because I wasn't drinking on late turns and nights, not always, no, never, all right, then I wasn't drinking then as well. So I've got pre-warning, and I'm a little bit conscious of that. The big thing for me as well, for the last 10, 15 years, I have had the comfort of a wage being in my bank every month. So I didn't have my own business where I thought, shit, I might not be able to afford the mortgage next week, which meant that I could then think, right, I invested £10,000 and I bought a container of, not drugs, from Vietnam, planters, metal planters. Originally, they were plastering stills. So from 10, 15 years ago, I had a company, and it just made things a bit easier. But it meant I was always working at home as well as at work. And I would do the home build renovation show, and I'd be there for 4 days, and I'd make a fair few quid, and I'd come back, and then I'd go to a pub fight, you know? So it was completely different, but and taught me, so the accountant I got involved in accountants and just getting into customer service, you know? I speak to, and I realised that actually people are out for a fight and they're going, right, my planter's dented, and what are you going to do? I said, I'm so sorry. I said, replace it immediately. What? Hey, what? You know, and because it's not difficult to do good customer service. And I always thought, right, I'll probably go onto that side of things. And I got a place in Mallorca that, again, I don't own any of it, but I bought it, and it's ticking along with the long-term rent and things. I don't get an awful lot of money from it, but it's something else. So I've really been conscious about not putting all my eggs in one basket. And now really, I think austerity has really kicked in, and I've run out of, I found I was being a busy fool. I was selling a lot of stuff, but having to make less and less profit. And so now I've gone really for more social media and people like dispatches. I help them get access into a police force where they couldn't otherwise, and various things like that, really. And conferences, I've done a bit of that. I do a bit of Rotary Club or conferences on SIOs, senior investigating officers, for fatals for the social media, how Twitter can help you, for example, the pitfalls to stop and that side of things. So it's probably not going to make me $1 million, to be honest. I've written this book, which has been a real surprise. Yay! That one there, it doesn't say not for resale. I haven't got my copies yet. This is the ridiculous thing. But yeah, that wasn't meant to be printed, and then somebody said it was half decent, so I printed it, and it's gone like wildfire. It's best selling on.
Harry, how did you mind? Did you self-publish it through Amazon Publishing, or did you go through a?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Because I went through about eight literary agents, and they're all very nice. I knew from the beginning it was like Devon retires, big deal. It's not a pull off the shelf type thing. I wasn't going to compete with, and it wasn't a book I wasn't going to compete with Merseyside, London, with the best terrorists type ARV jobs you can get. That's not what it's about. It's a bit more the human side of 30 years policing, and covers all the emotions through it, and including hopefully a fair bit of fun in there as well. But it was just so that my kids, who were not going to read it now, they're not interested. They have no idea what I do, quite frankly, I think. What I did. But eventually, them or their kids, maybe. And it was just fun putting it on paper, really.
And I know when we've had this discussion, me and Andy, of how much it helped him when he wrote his book. Has it helped you at all? It lifted some sort of demons off your shoulder, maybe, or anything like that, or?
I think so. I did a lot with Learn to Live when I was in the police. Learn to Live is where you speak to students, literally in a conference of sometimes 1,000 people, and they play a video, and the car crashes in the video, and then a firefighter walks on and tells you about his personal account for them, and then the police officer would come on and they'd tell a completely personal account, and then the video would play on into the paramedic thing, and then you get a next of kin, and you get a mother, who comes on, who's holding the same teddy that was her son. There's a dashing 21-year-old behind on the screen. So I was and I knew this worked better than giving tickets out for speeding. And if you could get them out. So I was very conscious of, I was able to release a few demons there, because I was speaking to family, and it wasn't, you can imagine, you're going to give speech on road deaths, and there's the mother of the deceased person that she's going to be talking, her son, dead, and and she, oh my God, she goes to the mortuary, she identifies, kisses him on the forehead, runs back home, and lies in his bed, and she says, I can still smell him on the pillow. You think, oh my good God, and the whole auditorium, you can imagine, they were flashing Texas before. By this, there's a dark floor, cannot see it, silent. And then, and that's to get into the heart and soul of those people, to know that not only if they're driving a car, this can happen to them, but also if you're a passenger in the car, it's for you to say, slow the fuck down, or I'm going to vomit in your air vent, and so that in a way for me was quite cathartic, especially at the end. And I didn't want to make it all doom and gloom in the book. Some of it is making pipe bombs when I was 12 years old as well, things like that. And there's some funny accounts, funny stuff. I don't wait until after I was after the police, because there was a few things in there I thought someone would complain. It would just mean more work for my corporate comms. No, I think they were glad to see the back of me.
What is the thing that you will miss most from being a cop?
This will be for you, I should think, as well. I'm going to speak for you here. Let's see if you're wrong. I'm going to miss the clowns, but not the circus. I love that saying.
Yeah.
Spot on.
I've never heard that saying before. No. That's a cracker.
Yeah. It's true, isn't it? Though you're going to people miss the banter, they miss the groups, they miss that sort of chat, and then officers who retire say, do you know, that just goes, and you do miss it. But yeah, that's very much so. It's important for us to remember the bullshit that went alongside that, so you don't feel quite so bad.
Yeah, I have that same conversation with lads out the Marines, and once you get together and you start talking about the good old times, and it feels like it was paradise, it was the best job on earth, and then you remember it was an awful lot of bullshit with it as well.
That was one of the reasons. I mean, eventually, I know Dave Wardell, who's had a dog that was stabbed and recovered called Finn, and he changed the law. It's called Finn's Law. He's a incredibly successful dog handler.
Was he the guy who was on Britain's Got Talent?
Yes, that's right. That's it. No, he did that. He did, and he said he did that. That was arranged sort of a year before. You know how these things work. I think that he'd applied for it, and he only did that because he wanted to get the word, because he knew to get it through the House of Lords, it had to keep the momentum to get so that punishments for. Because a police dog gets stabbed before, it was like 40 quid fine. Because it was, well, how much is a dog worth? Okay, well, it's damaged. You've damaged it. Whereas it was completely wrong. In America, they're treated as another police officer. Despite the fact it cost 30 grand to train. So he's changed the law. That's changed. Now he's progressing into Finn's Law 2, Part 2. To do it for all civilian animals, so that if civilian animals are mistreated, the sentences are far higher, fines and things. Because at the moment they're pathetic. But I was in a pub with him, and we were belly laughing. And I find it's always with military or police, and you are belly laughing. And he went, Harry, you've got to write this down. You've got to write it down. And it was a couple of people said that, and I thought, well, I probably will write it down, even if no one reads it. It doesn't matter. But it was much better than I thought. I thought it might. This is going to be a chore, but I just did it when I wanted to. I did it last summer. It's quite nice. Yeah.
Awesome. Give me a story from it, because Tom's already started it, but I've not. I
was going to say I've read 20% of it, and it's I'm really enjoying it, Harry. So.
It's very, very kind, and it's very kind. And I always feel guilty because I'm thinking I'm taking people's. The fact they invest several hours in reading your drivel, quite frankly, is very humbling. I do spend a lot of time in there saying what a failure I've been as well, because you get new recruits and cadets, and they can look at a police sergeant in the ARBs and go, oh wow, they must have. And boy, have I had some times, where I've literally been in my kitchen going, what am I doing? This is just an absolute disaster, sort of thing.
Early on, there is a photo of you dressed to the nines in all your outfits with a gun, and it's a pretty cool photo.
That got a lot of attention. That one, really. It's funny. Well, I guess the story, a little quaint little story, and there's a few of these in one sort of chapter. But I mean, Ollie Taylor is a police sergeant still, QPM, no doubt, in Devon and Cornwall, and he's traffic specialist and deals with all the fatals now. But he's my wingman. He's a best buddy, and everyone needs a wingman, you know. And he says, he reminded me that when I was in Paynton, and he'd just done his 2 years probation in Plymouth, and I was very senior 5-year in Torbay by this time. So, and I remember taking him on foot patrol. Remember when we used to do foot patrol? And we used to foot patrol, and I was going through Paynton, and it's these silly things like, there's a railway crossing there, and that's shut, and then all the traffic gets bulked up. It's a little seaside resort type thing, very kiss me quick type place, and the traffic jam, and there's this car sat right on the pedestrian crossing. I mean, they've judged it completely wrong, and of course there's 2 officers with helmets and whatever, and we walk up, and we can see people looking at us and looking at them, going, well, what are they going to do about it? And you know full well that the driver's looking at us going, oh God, I'm not here, I'm right, God. And they're like edging a centimetre, but it's not going to work. They are fully planted. And so you're looking at the bystander, and they're looking at me, and they're going, oh, what are they going? And I'm thinking, they can think of me, then give the guy a break, we've all done it. Or they're looking at me going, there you go, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to complain if you don't do something about it. So what I did, maybe I think too much, do you think? So what I did, I opened the back door of the car, got into the back seat, shuffled myself along, went, morning, opened the other door and carried on across the crossing and walked over to the other side. And I realised then that Ollie said it was perfect because everyone thought, yeah, the point had been made, you shouldn't be on the crossing. It was proportionate, I suggest, because you didn't get a stinking great fine for something you do, you know, by mistake. Everyone's guilty of it, aren't they? Really, and everyone sort of went away with a wry smile, and the job was done. But I mean, that's typical policing. It's there was one tiny little thing in amongst loads where you just think, you have to think on the moment and go, well, let's see what we can do with this with a little bit of humour maybe. And I mean, if the queue had started moving quickly, I might have been in trouble. But
that's like what I said to you before, though. It's I think anytime you come across a police officer and you feel like they're human and you can have a talk with them, you get so much more respect and so much more time. As if it's someone who, for example, would have run over and said, what are you parking there for? Or stop there for? You know, and it's just works so much better.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think there's very few of those. There's very few of those left. I mean, to be honest, and there's a thing on saying loads of sayings now and whatever. But I mean, people used to call me the traffic sergeant because I was dual rolled. But I knew that I was only interested in the road death side of things because it's a very human side of things. And I wasn't really interested in lorries and tachographs. And again, there's a very well-known saying: is if you can't see over it, you don't stop it. And I think there's a lot of coppers there, a lot of cops who you have to be a certain type of person to like how many hours of rest should you have after so many hours driving? You know, it's like there's certain breeds like that, but we've all known them where they are very technical and this is the law and this, that, and the other. But I've got to say, I think that has relaxed a lot. Everything is about, is it justified? Is it proportionate? Is it necessary? And those are things that we run through with everything, absolutely everything. So, and that gives cops a way out then of so they can use discretion more. So, well, you know, he's just stolen that pear from that market stall. What are you going to do about it, officer? You know, so then you do previous history, no previous offence, or one about 5 years ago. You can use that proportionality. You don't need to start lifting him and taking him to custody, sort of thing. You know, because it'd be ridiculous, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But it needs to be done. You need to have a level of proportionality and sort of log it. But that'll be it. But so those things, I think you can use a lot more discretion and humanity in it now.
Anything else, Andy?
No, I'm looking forward to reading the book though now.
Wait.
I think it's obviously on Amazon, isn't it, Harry? So I ordered it on Kindle. So
it's on paperback and Kindle, and it's was it £8.99 I think on paperback. Kindle is about £3.45 I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going remarkably well. They're all on the right bestsellers lists for biographies. And I think it was 6th on overall biographies, but police biographies and things. So it's all gone a bit silly. It's maintaining quite well as well.
It's incredible how you've built a social media following as well.
Yeah.
I always think 40,000 people follow it. The internet. We had this discussion yesterday. The internet is a strange place because you're so used to big numbers of someone's got 8 million followers, 2 million followers, and you forget that even 40,000. I mean, look, I've got 600, so what can I say? But even 40,000, you sit in a room and talk to 40,000 people. It's a football stadium, so.
And that's why it is so useful. And then if I want to talk to more, if I see such an injustice about police pursuits, for example, we're trying to do our job. Right, we're trained, this is how you pursue safety. But then I'm relying at the moment in the law for that person not to fall off the road and kill someone. Because if that happens, the whole, was this necessary brigade come out? The officer will probably end up in court for driving without due care because their training and their experience is not allowed to be taken into consideration. That officer's driving is taken in the same degree as any other driver. So it's a ridiculous situation. And so these officers regularly, there's about 100 a year, were going to court and then being found not guilty in court because the judge would say, this is ridiculous, what's it doing here? The stress. So I've always said, you've got to make a decision. Do you want cops to pursue people or not? And they've got to fall within within their training. As long as they're going within their training, but they were just really bad luck on the day because you're still relying on some idiot driving around like an idiot. So I was able to literally have a 10-minute phone call with the shadow policing minister, Louise Haigh at the time, she's Northern Ireland now. And I really just changed that opinion. And then she sent me a link to an article she'd done. It was pretty much our conversation. So the fact with social media, I can have a little influence on those who've got a lot of influence is magic. It's absolutely brilliant. And the shop window is all the pleasantries and the nice stuff. The behind the scenes, the dark room of the dark web of Twitter that I have, I can get information in and out, and I get information. I see a video of a cop doing something in North Yorkshire. I can get the information as to pretty much what they were like, what the circumstances were around it. I'm hearing something about a officer, some major incident that's gone on. It was really, really powerful. Sorry if I hear those tinging. It's really powerful, and that's what I find fascinating about it. It's just balancing getting the real information out there, but obviously having to keep hold of a lot of information I can't say either.
Can I just to end on? I'm conscious that we've taken an hour and a half of your time. It seems to fly by always. Is you've jogged my memory. So one of the questions I did have for you is what your thoughts on? I know certainly in America they're relaxing cannabis now, and it's certain legalized across majority of states. But from a police officer's point of view in the UK, do you think would it make your job easier if it was legalized? What are your thoughts around that?
At the moment, it's dealt with proportionately, so that because drugs are the worst for the cops because it's a lot of paperwork, and then it's getting it assessed and confirmed, and then it's a re-interview, and then they get a 25 quid fine. It's just a nightmare. There's no easy answer. If there was an easy answer, everyone would be doing it. And you get these people saying, legalize it or decriminalize it, it will solve all your problems. No, you get a whole host of different problems because it almost gives, I think there are people out there who aren't taking drugs because it is illegal. Whether if it was legal, it gives that sort of respectability to it, so they're more likely to dabble in it. Therefore, some of those are more likely to get heavily into it. I think there'll always be a black market because it's a little bit, I think Canada has still got the problem where they prefer to buy the stuff behind the scenes than the ones on the shelf, the stuff on the shelf. So there'll always be a black market. I'm not sure if I want to go everywhere and smell cannabis, literally everywhere, and it's getting a little bit like that now, I quite like the smell of it now and then. You go into a police station that's just done a seizure, and it was, wow, it was quite nice, But it's just I want to motivate.
If there's ever a clip that would be taken out of context, that would be the clip.
yeah, Yeah, go into the canteen and there they all were. No. And I was going to a motor racing thing, which was full of middle-aged people, and I couldn't get out of clouds of cannabis. It's like, Jesus, do I really want this down the high street? Down the, I'm not really. I like a bit of fresh air now and then. So that's my selfish view. Plus, there is not a place in the UK which is free of drugs. Torbay had a massive problem, I think, with spice, along with many other places. When it was legal highs, I was going to job to job to job to job. People zoomed out of their faces, destroyed, absolutely destroyed, with all these legal high little packets all over their bedsits and stuff. Why am I not going to all those anymore? Don't seem to be. What's happening to them? So now, I think now the shops have gone from the legal highs. So I think it's quite a good sort of gauge. Things have improved. So yes, it would cure some problems. It would take some of the organised crime out of it. And all the stuff that goes along with that. I think you create a whole host of other stuff. So my final answer, I don't know.
Thank you so much, Harry.
Yeah, thanks so much, mate. On short notice, and you didn't disappoint, mate. It was great to
pleasure.
hear a little bit about about your story, and thanks for your service, mate. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's been an honour to meet you guys as well. So thanks for having me.